Good morning, everyone. We're just loading the participants. We've got quite a few on board today, 119. So we'll just give it a few minutes. Apologies for the delay in starting the meeting today. It's got a few more to drop in. Okay, so good morning and welcome everyone to the second Tyrewise CBAFF webinar. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, members, and thank you for guests joining us today. As this is a CBAFF hosted webinar, we need to read our antitrust policy, which I'll do now. You are reminded that there must be no discussion of prices, surcharges, fees, costs, particular customers, revenues, market shares, or any other commercially sensitive topics. In particular, you are reminded that no market agreements have been or will be decided at CBAFF meetings, whether they involve pricing or amount of arrears. So thank you for everyone for joining. What we will do today is I'll slowly introduce the members, but we've got Dana from MFE who will present to us first. As we go through some of the questions and answers, please feel free to further clarify or put questions into chat and we will respond as we go. So over to you, Dana. Welcome.
Thank you. Everyone can hear me, hopefully. So good morning all, and thank you very much for this opportunity. We especially thank you to CBAFF and the members and their members' clients for bringing things to our attention that need to be addressed, importantly as we move into regulations. We very much appreciate that. We're very happy to have the opportunity to talk with you, and we look forward to further collaboration in future to work through the things that need working through. We want to improve our online guidance before the 1st of March, get better examples that things need to be worked through that are causing some confusion or concern, document on the ground how the system works as it begins to kick in, and as we go along, it's a continuous improvement story. We need to design improvements as we carry forward. The agenda I've put forward is introduce who we are that are here to present to you, to do a high-level background on the policy, the regulations, some of the questions you have raised, and the process going forward. Thinking we will pause then for questions that relate to that, and then Tyrewise is here to do a summary of the scheme and how it works for those of you who are in the webinar this time who were not there last time and didn't get that information. But there will be a later webinar on that subject for you as well, should that be required. And then to allow most of the time for the questions and discussion, because I know there's a lot of you here today, and there's a lot of questions that will be new to us that we haven't been able to answer in this presentation. So here with you is myself, Dana Peterson. I'm a senior analyst with the Waste Systems team, and my colleague Donna Peterson. And we still haven't found that ancestor in common that we're we're not cousins, but we do work in the same area. And so we're among a larger team, but we are happy to be here with you today. From Customs, we're delighted to have Paula Pierce with us, who's an expert on the classification to the tariff codes, and Terry Hampton, who does enforcement on coding of the use of the codes as well. Any technical matters relating to that, they will be able to help us. And then we've got Adele and her team from Tyrewise here as well. You would have met some of them in the previous webinar, those who were there, and she'll introduce them as that takes place. So let's rip right into it. Firstly, the regulations are under the framework of the Waste Minimization Act. So it's a separate piece from Customs, and it is what has driven that, the policy that comes out of that is about encouraging waste minimization to protect the environment from harm and provide environmental, social, economic, and cultural benefits. That's the purpose of that act. There are 6 priority products that were declared in 2020. Tyres is only one of them. It's the first to be coming through with a final scheme design and regulations, and it lucky first, but it's not going to be perfect. We know that, and we are very keen to get this working really well for the other 5 that are coming after it. We also have done what we call co-design. The scheme that is accredited to run the end-of-life management of tyres has been co-designed by industry. Industry understands more than any government person would how it works on the ground, what's going to be working practically, what is cost-effective. And so the working group that designed Tyrewise had representatives from the tire industry, vehicle importers, local authorities, and consumers. This has been going for quite a long time. The first recommendations were made in 2013 and updated in 2020 when the priority product declaration was moving forward. Now, as was common with all of government regulations, we want to make sure that it's equitable and it's cost effective. And so that is the approach that we've taken to get to where we've got to with this. We need to significantly improve management of end-of-life tyres within the act that we're working under, but share those costs equally amongst the purchasers of tyres, not unfairly. We want to capture all the new tyres entering the market and keep the fee collection and enforcement costs low. So that is why existing classification systems in Customs and NZTA were put forward, because you're not reinventing a new system. The focus has been on capturing the majority coming through into the market and to fund an effective product stewardship scheme. The fees are in proportion to average weights, not exact weights, but in proportion in broad size categories, because the larger tyres will incur more costs, both to collect and to process at end of life. We also, it was important to have the fees kept approximate to the current ad hoc fees that retailers charge for disposal of tyres. And so it is not managing every single thing about a tyre. It is doing the tracked tyre collection free to point of collection, and then incentivizing the market to pull things through into a much better system for New Zealand, more onshore processing, etc. Public consultation on those regulations we have took place in 2021, and Cabinet approved them last year. Where's my forward button going? Hang on. Well, there we go. So new regulations from 1st of March, as you know, the regulations will be on the charging of tyre fees will come into place. They will specify that the fees are to be used starting from the 1st of September by the Tyrewise Scheme to provide the tyre collection and tracking services and incentivize that onshore processing, recycling, and energy recovery for end-of-life tyres. The reason there's a 6-month lag in there is because there is no money sitting in a pot somewhere to hand it over. We have to build up the pool to be able to have Tyrewise do its job. The Tyrewise Scheme is accredited by the Minister for the Environment under the Waste Minimisation Act and governed by Auto Stewardship New Zealand. It's a non-profit that represents the industry. What is regulated? What is a regulated tyre? A pneumatic or solid tyre that is used or intended for use on a motor vehicle or an aircraft. So this includes all manner of wheeled and motored vehicles, trucks, buses, motorcycles, all-terrain vehicles, tractors, forklifts, off-road vehicles, vehicles and machinery used for agricultural, forestry, construction, mining, and industry. It doesn't include anything that the Land Transport Act hasn't defined as a motorized vehicle. So things like tires for bicycles, wheelbarrows, toys, wheelchairs, and electric mobility devices are not covered. So if you've got a tire that is one of those non-motorized for a non-motorized item, it's not going to have a fee attached to it, even if it's in a tariff code that's listed at the back of the regulations, only the regulated tires. So there's a bit of a complexity here about how we catch those things coming into the market. Loose tires, which is 2/3 of the fees that will be coming through, it's the larger part of it. We use customs data, and the Ministry for the Environment will collect the fee. I'll explain later why that is that way and not having customs do the whole thing. So the liable party there is the importers of loose tires or their agents and tires attached to aircraft. Suppliers, the data comes from customs to be able to identify who is owing that fee, and the fee collector is ourselves, the Ministry for the Environment, based on the customs data. I'll explain a bit more on that later. Tires attached to off-road vehicles is another category. They're not going to be coming through in the same way. So the importers of those tires would be reporting to Tyrewise, a self-declaration. Tyrewise would give that to the ministry, that data, and the ministry would then invoice based on that. Tires manufactured on shore. Now, I know there are none at present and haven't been for a long time. However, with international trading rules, we have to treat onshore manufacture exactly the same as imports. And so the mechanism is there, but we don't need to use it right now. And it's the same as for the off-road vehicles. And then there's the tires attached to vehicles. And that's a third of the fee, and approximately, and that's anyone registering a vehicle for road use for the first time, often a dealership. NZTA is just both the data collector and the fee levier for that. There are some exceptions specified in the regulations. So there's a de minimis, like there is with customs imports generally. If the value of importation containing those tires is equal to or less than $1,000, no fee is put on those tires. Retreaded aircraft tires. Now, this is the only category of tires we are aware of that actually has a serial number on each tire that tracks it through its whole life. And we can show that if a fee was paid at one point and it's been retreaded and brought back in many times, that it doesn't need to have a fee charged every time. So if that data can be provided to us, that will not have a fee on it once it's already had one paid once. Vehicles with tires attached who can show they've already paid somewhere along the line for those tires. Perhaps they bought tires separately, they had a fee on it and put them on the car before, or whatever the vehicle, before registering. That evidence, if it's provided in the usual way as set out in regulation, they can have a refund. And that comes from the ministry. So the regulation does set out refunds for those particular categories. Now, tariff codes versus weight. There's been a lot of debate about that lately, and we're looking at broad categories, and so therefore, if you're working on averages, there's some at either ends of that don't seem to be as fair as they could be. So the tariff codes, they're within an existing system, and reporting by weight would require new systems or significant amendment to the tariff codes relating to tires. The industry-led working group that designed Tyrewise considered the option of importers self-declaring to the accredited scheme based on weight, with import data being used for verification. They looked at that and decided it would have too much manual checking and add unnecessarily to costs, and they did not recommend it to government. So instead, they got the average weights per tariff code tire category were developed based on industry data about weights and usage, and so the majority of tires would have that graded increase for larger categories. We've been aware recently of some of the tariff categories where the fees not aligned very well at all, and we had thought it was going to be. Those are a priority for finding some effective remedies under the regulations, and we'll talk later about that process. Why is it not going forward? Here we go. So that categorization, how did that happen? So the fee is to cover the cost of future stewardship of the tire. The fees were grouped by type. Typical weights were averaged and multiplied against the number of EPU. That's an equivalent passenger unit. That's the average weight of a passenger tire, about 9.5 kilos. It's an international thing. And then it's based on $6.65 GST exclusive per EPU. And so it multiplies up. So you can see the table there. It's got average weights listed by the different categories. That's not tariff categories. That's categories of vehicles. The number of the EPU that be on average, and therefore the fee that comes out of that. The fees are attached as a schedule to the back of the regulations, and there's 4 tables there. So the rules about selecting the right tariff code for the import of loose tires, it hasn't changed. It's exactly the same as you're doing now. It's governed by customs. Where an item could fall under more than one category, the general rules of interpretation should be followed, and those are published in the tariff code itself. And for more certainty, anyone could apply to customs for a tariff ruling on the correct code, and it's valid for 3 years. And that fee is like less than $45. It's really good. It's a bargain. Invoicing and fee payment. Okay, so how will this work? So back to the loose tires, the ministry collects the fee based on import data shared by customs, and an information disclosure agreement has been put in place between ministry and customs. Now, this is primarily to protect commercial and private information, and it's out there online. There's a link to it. From April, the first invoices will be coming through to the importers or their agents from the ministry for the tires imported the previous month. And the payment due is no later than the 20th day following the month in which the invoice was issued. If after 3 reminder notices, enforcement action will be commenced. There is quite a heavy penalty if we get all the way to court and levying the fee. Anyone who doesn't pay the fee is required to pay on an offense conviction of fine up to $100,000. That's in the Waste Minimization Act, and it connects directly through to the regulation. It's been often asked, why can't payments be made directly to customs? Well, that was actually the original design. But we found that to do that, the fee has to be defined clearly in the customs legislation that it's a duty, and they can therefore use their things that they do for duties under their legislation. To do that, we have to go to Parliament. Parliament does that work, and we have been trying to get it on the legislative timetable for years now and have not been able to do so. Therefore, we came up with the expedient for now. The ministry is the fee collector based on customs data. There's a part of our Waste Minimization Act that specifically talks about data transfer from customs, and it's based on that. So that is the current situation. If tires are coming in attached to on-road vehicles, it goes through NZTA, as I mentioned. So they just build our usual thing. They charge based on the schedule in the back of the regulations, and a refund claim would come back to us if as I said, if somebody can show they've already paid somewhere. Attached to off-road vehicles, these are that self-reporting to Tyrewise. The data from Tyrewise needs to come to the ministry. It's part of our agreements with the Tyrewise. Then we calculate the fee in the same way. The invoice is not monthly but quarterly in this instance, and refund claims again would go through the ministry. If there's any misclassification and you need adjustment to what you've claimed on for your tariff code, so we understand there's some issues that people may be doing different codes for the same kind of tire entering the market. So there will be some settling out. And so if you need to check back and change something, go back to customs. Correction request has to go through customs in their usual process. They will then let us know on their monthly reporting basis that there's been some adjustments, and then we adjust our invoicing, and then we go through that in the same way as the other invoice. You'll know already that using the wrong tariff code could attract enforcement action by customs under the administrative penalties regime, unless voluntarily notified. So hopefully, if anything pops up, it'll be going straight into that. Fees and exported tires. Firstly, fees aren't charged on transshipped goods. Technically, they're not entering the New Zealand market, so that's fine. Fees on exported tires. There's some companies we understand that bring the tires in and then they sort out ones from that lot to then export out again. They've entered the market technically, and the trouble with trying to give exemptions for that is that you can't tell which tires are which. You can't tell if they were tires that had fees paid on them or tires that were legacy tires from whenever, and we shouldn't be giving refunds for where there was no fee paid. So there is no tracking system like for that aircraft tires that allows us to do that. There's a possibility if tires are exported, say, out to the Pacific Islands or whatever for reuse, they might come back to Tyrewise to manage. As you import a tire, it also attracts a fee. But again, we can't tell whether that tire was the one that had a fee on it or not. So we're open to developing practical solutions, but it's there's a reason why it wasn't put in the regulations to begin with. So how are we going to make things a bit better as we're moving forward? Appropriate cost-effective adjustments for some tire category fees has not been ruled out for later, once the regulations have commenced and their effectiveness can be monitored. So we're not agreeing that we should not implement the regulations at this point in time. There's this minority that needs fixing, and we're saying, well, let's fix them and let the regulations start. Any proposed refinement of tariff codes or regulations will require good documentation of impacts, options, costs, and feasibility to progress. Customs governs these codes. Customs process. They need the information to show that it needs to be done by this date. Is it urgent or not? Have we done all the necessary details? So that's not going to happen in a week. So we will need some time for that. A Tyrewise technical advisory group has been proposed to look at potential options for improving the fee accuracy, particularly to tire weight in that minority of tariffs with those very broad categories. I mean, for example, the earth mover and greater tires, there are some very large to relatively small tires in that mix, and that could clearly be improved. There's only about 2,000 tires out of the total large amount, 65 whatever million. Amendment to the tariff, the working tariff document could not be concluded prior to the 1st of March, but could be explored further at a later date if considered appropriate from that process. and we will be regularly monitoring the effectiveness of the regulations in the scheme and welcome feedback. So I'm sorry I've rattled through that quickly, but I'm most interested in the conversation that we're going to have next. So firstly, before we go on and let Tyrewise have a chance to talk about the framework, any questions that we want to be talking about now that I haven't covered adequately so far? Now, I can't see the questions, so someone's going to have to.
So we do have some questions in the chat, Dana. So if you
Yep,
click
yep.
on the Q&A button down on the bottom toolbar of the screen, you'll
Yep.
see that there are 7 questions. So the first one is, just to jump in early, will all the HS codes be the same from all the suppliers, or will every supplier have their own set of codes? The customs or customs?
Yep, that would be me. Yes, HS codes are the same for every importer. So yeah, no, there are no individual codes. It's a New Zealand document for use by everybody, and some down to 6 digits is a worldwide document.
Thank you, Paula. Adele, you wanted to answer the next question that came up, and I'll just ask you to read that question out while you answer it.
Certainly. So this question is, what about vehicles imported that don't get registered, e.g. forestry equipment, irrigators, farming, etc.? So any vehicle that's imported not for registration for use on the road, there is a self-declaration form that you fill in that will be placed on the Tyrewise website, and the Adana ring through that process where the invoices will be raised based on the information received every 3 months as opposed to monthly.
Thanks, Adele. The next question we have is, how can we identify end use of a tyre, e.g. could be a farming application, mining, utility, road building, etc. The same tyre but sits under different categories for Tyrewise with different costs associated. Adele wants to take that question.
Yes, because I think we need it to be defined a little bit further. Why is the question being asked? Because it's not material to the scheme, and it's also not material to the declaration. So perhaps if the person could send us a question directly, we can respond.
Thanks, Adele. And then we may need to have that same similar answer for the next question, which is, we have a classification ruling from New Zealand Customs on ATV tyres, which is assuming that's dated the 1st of August of 2014. I'm not sure, Paula, if that's enough of a question for you to help us
Yes,
answer
I can
that.
answer that question. Rulings are only legally valid for 3 years, so that ruling will be expired. So if they want another ruling, they can apply for a ruling, which there is a link on the Customs website for, and I think there's also, I'm pretty sure there's also a link in this presentation.
If I can reel back to our previous question, I think, you know, because the one of the first questions that's asked in the tariff code is what is the intended use of the tyre? And Paula can talk about this more, so that knowing what the intended use is part of understanding which tariff code to use. And perhaps that's what they were talking about. And Paula can probably talk to that a little bit better than I can.
Yes, I realise that the tariff, the way it's currently written, is written by end use for those to 401170 and 401180. You need to look at what the tyre is intended for. Is it intended to go on a vehicle that is for agricultural use? Or are you intending the tyre to go on a vehicle for construction? If there isn't a clear-cut answer to that, then you need to either get a ruling, or you'd need to look at the general rules of interpretation, which are at the front of the tariff, to try and assist you with that. You need to remember that any classifications, if you have difficulty, can be sorted out with your broker. The broker is used to classifying goods. They classify goods all the time for importation, and tyres is really no different. So they will be able to assist you if you've got difficulties. But if you do want some surety, then you can apply for that ruling. It's only $40.88, as Dana said. And that will give you a 3-year binding as long as, you know, there's no significant changes in the information presented for the ruling.
Sorry, I leaped to end of life when I answered that question. But Paula, just to confirm, is that ruling then applies to everybody and it's public? So each company wouldn't have to apply for it. So, okay.
No, it is the importer who actually applies for the ruling and pays for it. So it is for their use. Whether they want to distribute it is up to them, but it is only binding for the person who actually applies for it.
Okay.
So another importer or broker cannot rely on that ruling to give them certainty over a tariff code.
Thanks,
I presume
Paula.
that, can I just interrupt briefly for that? I mean, if someone wants to voluntarily share their ruling, I suppose is that possible, Paula?
What they do for themselves is none of my business. But all I'm saying is it's only binding for the person who's applied for it.
Yes, yes. So in theory, for example, an association could apply for a ruling and share it with their members.
I don't know about that one.
Oh,
I
okay.
would have to get information on that.
Thanks,
Dawn,
Paul. I think
still
that
can't
actually
see the chat. I'm sorry. So
that's
any
okay.
more
I'll
questions?
keep. Yep, I'll keep reading through. Do we have a few more? So I think that actually answered our question around, will customs be giving an industry-wide classification ruling to customs brokers so the whole industry uses the right tariff code? I think you've just answered that one, Paula. So I'll just go through. We've got a thank you here from Jonathan, as I was able to answer one of his questions by typed answers. So if you guys are using or are not familiar with Zoom, if you click on the question and answers, there is a answered section. So we are answering ones that we're not answering live. So we'll try and keep this to the live questions one. So next question is the 1st of March based on the clearance date, arrival into New Zealand date, or as mentioned in the presentation, date to market? Please clarify. And if I remember that rightly, it's actually the clearance date as it goes through customs. And I see Adele and Dana nodding, so excellent. So it's clearance date is the answer to that one. And Rob Gosling has said hi to everybody. Hi, Rob. Thank you. Appreciate that. Next question we've got from Gavin Ward. What defines a light truck tyre versus a PCR tyre? Who would like to take that one?
I don't know
I
what
think,
a tyre is, so I can't answer that one.
Can we just come back to that one?
We can come back to that one. Rob Gosling has asked, please note that off the road tyres do have individual serial numbers and are tracked through life by serial number to end of life.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rob, can you please use the emails that come up in the end to give us a little bit more information on that? We would be very interested in knowing that further as to who's tracking them and who's recording those.
And also just Rob, so off the road tyres is a big category. So whether is this related to the mining tyres, for example, and those extra large tyres that we were talking about the other day. So just be, if you could put that information in for the team as well, thanks.
And then it seems to be our ATV tyres are a very popular topic. Someone is asking for clear guidance on the correct tariff code to use for ATV tyres. So should they be under a 41190 or 41170? So again, if you're a little unsure, I think customs advice is to seek a tariff ruling. Is that right, Paula?
That's correct, but also you need to bear in mind that 401170 is for the agricultural and forestry vehicles and machines. So is it being used for that, used on a vehicle that goes under that category? If it is, it's 401170. If you're not sure, or it could go into both, you'll need to either look at the rules of interpretation or apply for a ruling. Correct.
Thanks, Paula. Our next question is, As a tyre importer that will be importing passenger tyres and invoiced by Tyrewise in March, payable in April, when do we invoice our customers? In March or April?
So the invoicing comes from the Ministry for the Environment, not Tyrewise, for a start. It's happening in April, not March, because you need a month of stuff coming across the border before or being registered. Sorry, or being reported through Tyrewise as off-road. So I'm not certain where that's coming from. Adele.
I can help. Yeah. So this is about inventory.
Ah.
So you'll be invoicing in April, but for March inventory. So it's for all inventory in stock from 1 March, needs to have the fee attached to it, because that's what you're pushing through your retail supply chain. So yes, so the invoice that you invoice for in April will actually be for all of your product that you're importing from 1 March, plus your in stock, which you're not invoiced for.
Thanks, Adele. Our next question comes from Ian Harvey. So does the stewardship fee based on the tariff code match the supposed $2 charge on an ATV tyre? And I think this is in reference to our Schedule 2, Table 1 fees on loose imported tyres, where our first tariff code, which is 4011700039K, has a $2 fee per tyre charge.
I'm sorry, Donna, what was the actual question then from that?
Oh, I'll read it out again. So
Sorry.
Does the stewardship fee based on the tariff code match the supposed $2 charge on an ATV tyre?
So the fee matches the code, the tariff code. The question is really, does the tyre match the tariff code? And the other question broader than that is, does the tariff code adequately cover all the tyres in there in terms of the size of them and the use of them, which is another issue to one side. So I'm not sure what they actually want to know. If it's into that tariff code, as Paula said, if it's an agriculture machine and it falls under the 70, then
it's $2 charge. Yeah.
Just to not get confused here between what collectors are paid for, because this is the misinformation that has been spread around recently, that collectors are going to be paid $2 for an ATV tyre. They're not. They're paid by tonne. So just, Ian, make sure that that's not also part of your question. Just to go back to the previous question posed by Gavin Ward, which says, what defines a light truck tyre versus a PCR tyre? I think it refers back to what Paula said before around your intended use of your tyre. I do understand that light truck, and just being clear, this is probably a question for an importer or of tyres, but light truck tyres are often marked with an LT on them, and they often have more rigid sideboards and deeper tread than a PCR, which, for those that don't know what that is, it's a passenger car radial tyre. So Gavin, not sure if that answers your question.
Thanks, Adele. Our next question says, hello, with tyres transiting through New Zealand, e.g. resold or exported to Pacific Islands, would the export invoice serve as proof for credit on the applied tariffs?
Given that you can't distinguish the tyres in that load from the tyres that might have had fees paid on them, it's hard to do that. Adele, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's what Dana has said already, is that how would you provide evidence that the tyres that you'd purchased to then sell on to the Pacific Islands were ones that you'd had the advance of the tyre stewardship fee paid on. So remembering that the tyre stewardship fee is paid on the purchase of a new tyre for the purposes of stewarding that tyre at the end of its life. So as yet, there's no way to find where you could provide that evidence that you have paid the fee on that specific tyre you're then exporting.
Thanks, Adele. I think we have a follow-up question around why a ruling cannot be applied industry-wide. They are seeking to understand if there's any way to make this consistent and transparent. Paula, any comments on that at this time?
At this point, the ruling system here for tyres is really no different to a ruling for anything else. If someone wants a ruling for I don't know, a piece of carpet or something like that, then that only is released to the importer of those goods. So the ruling's actually not being dealt with any differently for tyres as it is for any other imported good. It's released to the person who's applied for it and paid for it. We are looking at other options, but at the moment, that's what we've got.
Yeah, I'll also explore whether Tyrewise itself can apply on behalf of an importer, so that then the decision can be distributed. But I think it's a good point. I've written it down, and we'll see how we can make sure that the rulings applied for can be distributed at least through the import, because there's importer working groups. So yeah,
I will make inquiries around that as well. So
good one.
We'll do what we can.
It makes perfect sense. So I'm sure that we will we'll find a way to make it work.
So the next one is also from an anonymous person. So what is the tariff code for an SUV tyre? I'm not sure if that's enough information, Paula, to get that specific code.
I'm not sure that it is either.
So really it comes back to that the other information that we've said already, which is we actually need to look at that purpose of the tyre and start from that as a starting point, and then go to the rules of interpretation from there.
Correct.
And next question is, the difference in fee collected varies from $2 to $13.30 per tyre, which we need to pass on, so it needs to be correct from the 1st of March. Dana or Adele, have you got a comment to that particular question or comment?
Dana, I think, is this the next part of the presentation? Might cover this a little bit around what to select.
Well, the next part's yours, Adele.
Oh, okay. So no, so we've covered already. All good. Yes, well, that's the purpose of trying to produce the guiding documents that this group is working on specifically. I did, in terms of the $2 and the $13.30, I don't know that there is any. Just thinking off the top of my head, I can't think that there's any tyre in that range where it could be exactly the same tyre used for exactly the same purpose that would attract a $2 fee or a $13.30 fee. And I know that there's some questions around ATV tyres, but yeah, off the top of my head, I can't think of one in the schedule that falls in that range. If it's got no other identifying features, and it could be $2 or it could be $13.30.
Thanks, Adele. The next question is actually more of a comment, is just suggesting that they look at the tariff code. So I'm just reading these out and ticking them off so that we're going through the list in order. And then there was another comment that not all OTR tyres or off-the-road tyres have unique serial numbers. So that is also good to know. Thank you. The next question is from Anonymous. So if New Zealand Customs are not giving industry-wide tariff classification rulings for ATV tyres, could we have the potential that certain brokers or importers are using a cheaper per tyre rate, so they now have a competitive advantage?
I suppose the answer to that is yes.
Excuse me, that exists for any goods.
Yeah.
Whether it's carpet or tyres. So that broker risks administrative penalties. And if duties involved it can be a percentage of the duty that's evaded. Over.
Yeah, so just to clarify this for this person, this is where a tyre could fit into two different classifications quite legitimately, and one has a lower fee and one has a higher fee. And remembering that these are quite different to duties, they're attached to the sell price of the tyre. So it means the sell price of the tyre would be higher or lower depending on what tariff is chosen. And I know the problem area sits around ATV tyres primarily in this conversation, but there is examples of ATV tyres fitting into two different tariff codes. So I think that we do need some advice on what is the correct one to use. That is, always use the lowest or always use the highest. There is going to have to be something there because it is having an unintended consequence.
Yep, I understand that. So yeah, I'll have a look and see what we can do from our end, and if you have a look and see what you can do from your end, Adele. And yeah, we'll see if we can come up with something that we can release for ATV type in particular.
But also, I think, let me just add something to that. I mean, it always use the lower or highest, I think, is relating to the price or whether the fee, not the tariff code. I think the rules of interpretation are to do with the higher tariff code when there's an equivalence, if I understand correctly, Paula. So you can't just choose the cheap one.
No, you can't just choose the cheap one just because you like the cheap one better.
Yeah.
We all like the cheap one better sometimes, but yes,
it's where it is exactly the same.
Cheap one because it's nice to have as opposed to the more expensive one or the one that has the higher levy. I would like to actually maybe point out at this point that while 401170 has breakdowns for graders and earth movers and tractors, and 401180 does it mean to say that graders, earth movers and tractors would only fall into 401170? They may well fit into 401180. The fact that it doesn't have that same breakdown doesn't mean to say that they don't fit into 401180. All right, just for clarification on that one.
Thanks, Paula. Next question comes from Brenda Russell. What happens with tyres that are imported on wheels and rims and are classified under HS code 8708?
We've already, I think that's already gone out, that tyres that have wheels and rims attached to each other are classified under where the tyre is classified, not where the rim is classified. It's only if they're imported separately that they can get classified separately. But otherwise, tyres with rims attached get classified under where the tyre would fall.
Thank you, Paula. Andrew's got a technical question for us. So 4011-2012 or other, what differentiates the other category from 4011-20 for use in assembly? Is the other category to be used for replacing tyres on existing vehicles and 4011-20 only for new assembled vehicles?
4011-20 is for tyres on a kind used on buses and lorries.
I think he might be talking about 4011-10. I think that's got use of assembly on vehicles in it.
4011-10 is of a kind used for motor cars.
Perhaps if Andrew can come back and clarify, just check the code and come back and clarify.
Other is buses and lorries that aren't used for assembly. They're other and have an internal rim diameter of less than 495 millimeters. So it's not for use in assembly of motor vehicles. So does that answer that one? Is the other to be used when used for replaced vehicles, tyres on existing vehicles? 4011-20 only for new. 4011 full stop is for new tyres. So we're not talking about anything else.
I think they're asking for that. These so 401120 is for a kind use on buses and lorries, and then the next double dash is talking about for use in the assembly of motor vehicles as may be determined by the
Correct.
minister. So I think
Correct.
that's the differentiation that they're wanting to understand between that and a replacing a tire on an existing vehicle.
Well, that would only be for use in assembly of motor vehicles as determined by the minister under section 14 of the Act. So if it doesn't fall under that, then it falls under 2011, 2012. So you need to move down to that next one, the other.
And can I clarify, Paula, that for use in assembly piece, has that ever been clarified further by the minister under that? Can we get down to what it means, actually?
I don't think we assemble motor vehicles in New Zealand.
Not anymore, do we? Not
So
not
you
in a
can't
big not in big numbers.
No,
No.
only if you're
So unless the vehicle's
one-off.
assembled in New Zealand, you wouldn't be using 401120.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
As I know, there's no vehicles being assembled in New Zealand. So you'd have to move past that
Yep.
2 dash and down to the next one, which is other. And then whether the internal rim is less than 495 or greater than 495.
Thanks, Paula.
So, hopefully
Oh,
that
this
clarifies.
is it is. The next tricky question, should a tire for a boat that can also travel on land, or sorry, would a tire for a boat that could also travel on land, such as sea legs? Good question.
Is it considered a motorised vehicle? Is it considered a motorised vehicle in the Act?
The Land
So
Transport Act is I wonder if they cover boats that can go on land.
Means a vehicle drawn or propelled by mechanical power and includes a trailer, but does not include, and then there's about 8 examples of trailers that it doesn't include. So I guess since it can travel on land, it would be vehicle drawn or propelled by mechanical power. Just thinking that through broadly.
So yes.
So yes, may need a little bit more information on that if you wanted something more specific. Nigel Sherborne is asking, gee, is the $2 going to be enough to actually recycle it? I think this is to do with the ATV tire and the code of 401170.
So I can answer that. So the collectors and processors. So first of all, the collectors are not paid on picking up a load of ATV tyres and then paid out of assuming that all those ATV tyres are only attracting $2, they're paid on a tonne rate mixed loads from collection sites, and then the processors are paid an incentive. So don't relate the tariff code and tyre stewardship fee at the import end to what the cost is to recycle a specific tyre at the end of its life, because there's actually no relationship between the two. One gathers a pool of money, another is a tonnage rate for collection.
Thanks, Adele.
Oh, there's one more bit on that, Donna. There's also the piece that to keep the fee near to what our current ad hoc disposal fee is, it doesn't actually cover the full cost to recycle a tire. It provides an incentive to pull the tires through into better use. So yes, it pays for the collection. No, it does not pay for the recycling. So
Yeah, sorry, that's really important, Dana.
Thanks for that. Our next question is from Justin Reed, and he's saying, just to clarify, we need to look at all inventory in distributor stock at March 1st, regardless of when it arrived, then add arrivals for March. Adele, this one might be for you.
Yep, so that's our understanding. You have, because that stock is moving through your network, and so it goes to regulated tyres being sold. Those tyres from 1 March, irrespective of where they are, as long as they're cleared or in inventory, have the tyre stewardship fee attached to them, and the seller is on charging that fee at point of sale. So there's a diagram we've got in our presentation that covers that a little bit.
So if a tyre comes in though before the 1st of March, it hasn't cleared customs. If it's cleared customs before the 1st of March, it doesn't have the fee owing on it. It's only after it's clearing customs after the 1st of March.
That's right. So, but the seller at the other end of it is charging the fee.
Yeah, exactly.
So our next question is coming from Gavin Ward, and again, it's dealing with our LT tyres and our PCR tyres. And the question is, so an LT 265 50 R20 is an LT tyre, and a P265 50 R20 is a PCR tyre.
So I can respond there. So the answer is yes, but I think the question, Gavin, is what tariff code do you use for identifying those tyres when you import them? That's really the question. So yes, they're two different tyres. They might be the same tyre, but they've got a different code at the beginning of them. What's their intended use? And then that follows through to the correct tariff code to use at declaration. Maybe, Paula, you'd like to add on anything there, but it's about the expected use of that tyre.
Great.
I think also it's important to acknowledge that this is one of those categories of tires that where you end up with your LT tire is not proportionate to the weight of the tire at all compared to where it's supposed to be in the rating. The passenger tire is fine, but it's the LT tire, because it's gone through the buses and lorries category, and it's ended up, and it's got a big wide diameter. It ends up in a category that's more EPUs than you'd expect for a tire of that size. So that's one of the ones we have to put on the urgent pile to work on.
Thanks, Dana. And I think we finally got to more information from the person who was asking about the ATB tyres that had a specific tariff ruling dating back into 2012. Paula, I may just get you to have a quick read through that question to see if actually we've already answered that.
Yes, we have already answered that. So the 2014 ruling is that previously, any rulings are only legally binding for 3 years. So a 2014 ruling is no longer legally binding. If we want further clarification, that's the one we need to look at. We need to do a little bit more work around ATVs, and we've already identified that one as being an issue.
Would it be fair to say, Paula, that the customs, but it hasn't, the classifications haven't changed probably since then that much either?
No, the classifications haven't, but as we've already discussed outside of this meeting, that vehicles have changed considerably in use over the last few years. So, your utes and things like that were definitely only farm use. Now they're used for, running around town. Potentially there's been a change in, there has been a change in how we use vehicles and different types of vehicles. Definitely since 2014, that's for sure.
Thanks, Paula. Our next question is, hi, thanks for this session. Does a table exist which can be shared which links tyre category to likely tariff codes and applicable levies for each category?
Yes, it's attached to the regulations.
No, so Dana, they're asking for the next level on. They're wanting the tyre category to be in there. So in our regulations, we've just got tariff item and fee. They're wanting another column with the tyre type or common tyre types for each category.
As Paula has said, that is in the tariff code, the use, it heads up those change of numbers.
I understand that that we have to work through whether we're allowed to publish that information or not. So because of the fact that it is actually using NZ Customs information, we did originally have that information available, so perhaps we can collectively take that offline. Yes, obviously there is a table that exists, but in when the regulation came through, we were asked to remove that part of the table and just have the tariff code. But we'll come back on that one.
Probably just a heads up at this stage. I've become aware that there is a leaflet floating around that's orange and the background. It doesn't actually identify where it came from. I originally thought it came from Tyrewise, so ask them about it.
Definitely did not. Yeah.
So I understand it did not, but some of the information on that leaflet is actually incorrect. It gives types of vehicles, has a fee, and those fees don't necessarily match with the correct tariff items. So please be very cautious or throw it out, because it's got incorrect information in it and it's not a good guide document.
Yeah. Yes, definitely reiterate that if that flyer has come in your possession, it's not from Tyrewise and it does contain incorrect information. But I think it goes to show the danger of trying to link vehicle, the categories that we use for vehicle types with tariff codes, and that's one of the reasons why that was removed when the regulations were put in place, is because it can be used for the wrong purpose.
Correct.
Thank you.
And that's already raised some issues.
Yeah, and our next question is a follow-up from Rob Gosling. In regard to tyres that are exported, each tyre will carry individual serial numbers, so tracking arrival into New Zealand and export is simple enough.
Rob, do you mean OTRs only, or every single tyre that comes into New Zealand? Perhaps if you could clarify that for us.
Next question is for car importers, is the fee payable direct from the importer, or is it the responsibility of the broker to collect on behalf of the importer?
So I can answer that. So the fee payable on vehicles is as part of on-road costs. So it's the first point of registration of the vehicle. So the importer may, if that's part of your commercial arrangements, or the first owner may, but it's whoever first registers the vehicle pays it as part of on-road costs. So brokers are not actually involved in that part of it.
Thanks, Adele. Next question is from Dean Sharp. With tyres that are exported to New Zealand to the islands and for any reasons are re-imported back into New Zealand, does the fee get charged on them again?
Imports of used tyres does attract a fee. The question is, you can't track that particular tyre to whether it was had a fee paid on it before it got exported out to the islands. I mean, there could be legacy tyres being scraped up and sent out to the islands, for example, not new ones coming in this year.
Conversely, could be legacy tyres from the islands coming into New Zealand. Yeah, so I guess the short answer is yes, if you're sending tyres from New Zealand to the islands and then turning around and bringing those same tyres back, yes, you would be paying the fee twice.
The next question I think is just more information around what's the tariff code for an SUV, and they've said an SUV is a passenger car PCR. So Paula, am I right in thinking that you start with the purpose of the vehicle, which is motor car for that particular SUV?
You start with the purpose of the vehicle, yes. Regardless, if that falls into a motor car, then yes. If it doesn't, you move on.
Great, thank you. Next question is, a Ford Ranger, the #1 selling vehicle, can be fitted with a passenger car radial or a light truck construction tyre. What code do we use for in this instance? Maybe we need a little bit more information on that one.
What's the purpose of the vehicle?
Yep.
The motor car? The truck? Light truck? What's the purpose for it?
So that sounds like that category is before, where the passenger one has one fee and the light truck version of it has another fee. I mean, the light truck version does way more, but the fee, so it is different. the tire weighs more, but yeah.
I think we put that in the guidelines,
Yes, we
just
do.
reinforce that
Yes,
prior
yes.
use.
Yep. And next question is from Shane Douglas. Please clarify, does the importer or agent receive the monthly invoice? My understanding is it's on the information that you have selected. So if you want the invoice to come to you as the importer, MFE will send you the invoice. But if you also declare that you want your agent to be the one receiving the invoice, then that is something that you can do as well. Adele, Dana, that's correct, isn't it?
It's based on the information we get from customs. So it's up to the importer what they identify as the party who's dealing with it after that.
Just to be clear, so direct disclosures to Tyrewise, ones where we have to collect data, it's the importer's billing contact. So yeah, once again, up to you if your billing contact is customs or somebody else, that's who will get invoiced.
This seems to be a popular $2 fee question is coming up again. Can you give us an example of a tyre that would be under the $2 levy?
Under that specific code.
Yes.
Paula, this is a question for you around that code. Sorry, I don't know.
Well,
it's
that
a
code is
it's
the
a 4011
agricultural
70 0039K.
I couldn't answer anything about the levy,
No, so the
No,
schedule
they
of
wanted
that,
the tyre.
but that's for an agricultural forestry vehicle.
Yeah.
That's all I can assist you with.
Yeah. So we'll need to come back to you on that one as well.
so the schedule of fees in the regulations, there isn't one below $2. If that's any help.
I think it's meaning under that code that incurs a $2 levy. It's so $2 is a tyre that weighs about 200 grams. So yeah, I mean, legitimately to attract that code.
I'd be surprised if there's an agricultural forestry vehicle that has a tyre under that kind of weight, but I don't know enough about tyres to answer that question.
I happened to drive past a very big agricultural self-propelled vehicle on the way to work this morning, and I noticed on the side they had like a tiny little dolly kind of wheel, so very, very small.
Right.
Perhaps that's what that might be.
Yeah, can't help you any further on that one, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So our next question is, if we are to clear shipments arriving in March and February, will this be included in the data for fees or excluded due to the start date being the 1st of March as the clearance date?
I think it's excluded.
Technically excluded. Do customs clear goods that haven't arrived in the country yet? Is a question for customs.
We clear 68% of sea shipments are cleared prior to arrival. So
Okay.
Okay.
So therefore 68% of tyres imported into the country in March won't have a fee attached, won't be charged a fee for. But once it hits your inventory, you're going to have to charge the fee because it's in effect from the 1st of March.
You mean prior to March?
No, the regulations in effect from the 1st of March, and so they will be selling a regulated tyre. So they still have an action to take from the 1st of March. This is about importers paying that piece. So if they can clear their shipments prior to it landing on shore 1st of March, but don't actually go into their inventory from 1st of March, then yes, they won't have to pay the fee. But they'll still be selling a regulated tyre, so they are still caught up in the regulation. They'll still be selling a regulated tyre from 1st of March.
Yep. Correct.
Okay, I'm just conscious of time because I couldn't quite recall what time the webinar's finished, and we're well after 12 now. So I'll just keep going until someone tells me to stop.
1 o'clock, I think it was a
Oh,
2-hour
excellent.
webinar set
Brilliant.
aside. Yeah.
Okay, because we've still got 23 open questions.
Mm.
So next one is you mentioned non-motorized vehicles would have a tariff code but won't be charged a fee. How will this be determined whether it will be charged or not? Is there different tariff codes for non-motorized vehicle like a wheelbarrow tyre?
I think, Paula, the answer is they're not separate codes for wheelbarrows or particular uses.
Aren't wheelbarrows solid tyres?
Not always, no.
It can be pneumatic.
Pneumatic, yeah. Yeah, so we do have that live conversation that's been going backwards and forwards between us is it's a pneumatic tyre. It falls within the codes listed in the schedule, but it's not a motorised vehicle. So and so it's correctly falling into the right tariff code. How does that get excluded from being charged? Because the customs data will go to ministry.
Yes. Yes. So the question, I guess, is at customs side, they haven't got a way to distinguish that because it's not a subheading in their tariff code.
Sorry.
My response is we need to come back on that one. It's probably not a huge volume, but we might need to flag something at the billing side. A check and balance at the billing side would be my question. I was thinking about our self-declaration information. We'll add an extra line on for motorised or non-motorised, just to help clarify the use of that tyre.
So our next question comes from Colleen Shanks. I have seen in the past where New Zealand Customs have issued guidelines with regard to tariff classifications. Would New Zealand Customs be prepared to issue a general guideline for ATV tyres and also for SUV tyres? I think we've kind of discussed this at length and said that both Tyrewise and Customs were going to work together on this one and provide a little bit more information. So I think we've answered this one if it's okay with the panelists.
Yep, it's fine.
The next question is, someone's given us an example of a tyre that falls into different categories. Is a 15 by 6 by 6 multi-rib tyre. It is used on a hay rake and it is a $2 fee, and there's also the ride-on lawnmower which comes in at $13.30. So I think that's just a comment there unless anyone else wants to provide an additional comment.
And what tariff code would that have been declared under? Just helps us answer that question.
That would be under agricultural. Sorry, questions dropped off.
Oh, sorry. It would be agricultural, yes.
Yep.
So the next question, sorry, I clicked the button too quick for you.
That's all
right. Between March to September, tyre dealers will be paying twice for disposal from invoice and the actual disposal, as Tyrewise will not be collecting between these months. What's your comment on this?
I think the important thing to remember is that the tyre fee is for the new tyre, which is not being disposed of and will come back later and be collected up. It's the ad hoc fee in that 6 months is for the old tyre that hasn't had a fee paid on it. And that's business as usual. There's a few types of tires we understand that can wear out within 6 months, like a heavy use truck tire. And we need to have an expedience for that to make that fair. And it's mostly to do with, can you store the tires until after the 6 months and they'll be collected for free. But yeah, there are two separate purposes. One's the old tire and one's the new tire. They're not doubling up on the same tire.
Yeah, and just to be clear that the tyre dealer is charging the tyre stewardship fee to the customer. So it's actually the customer paying the tyre stewardship fee for future stewardship.
That's right.
if the tyre dealer wishes to continue to charge disposal for the old tyres taken off during that period, that's up to them. Absolutely get why you will, because there's a cost. You will need to continue having your old tyres collected from there. If you have registered with Tyrewise as a tyre seller, tyre generator, tyre fitter, and an importer, by now you would have received some point of sale material to help you with that, help you explain that with your customers. And I also know that this is probably the trickiest conversation to have with your customers. So we're trying to provide as much support as possible. But as Dana said, it's really important that tyre stewardship fee, the conversation about that, is for future stewardship of that tyre.
Thanks, Dana and Adele. The next question is, what happens if a broker inadvertently uses a wrong code?
I can answer that. It's potentially they'd be subject to administrative penalty. And if Judy was involved, it could be a percentage of the short payment. But having, no, this is duty in terms of the tariff classification being affected. But the actual administrative penalty legislation says that may issue a penalty. So there's some discretion with customs officers there. And if they're going to issue a penalty, they should seek an explanation and advise you if that's the case. Over.
If the broker is aware also that they've made an error, they can make a voluntary disclosure for the change.
Correct.
And from the invoicing end, the ministry receives adjustments from customs for the month prior, and then that just goes through an accounting process to get that corrected.
Also, just to add to that, we don't issue administrative penalties on voluntary disclosures if customs hasn't signalled an interest in that import or the range of dates for importation, i.e. given notice that they're going to do an audit. Over.
Thank you. The next question is actually a comment. So Adele, I'll let you read that, but it was very much, thank you, Adele, you've got my point about the ATV tyres. So if you're able to just have a quick read through that, because I think we've addressed all of those points around the ATVs.
Yeah, I think it is. It goes back to that. Could be under two codes, choose the higher one or choose the lower one. You could have a competitive disadvantage or an advantage.
Yeah, so we're doing further work in that space.
Further work.
Yeah.
And then the next one is actually Andrew just commenting that no vehicles are assembled in New Zealand, so nothing should fall under this category. But I suppose we've also future-proofed it, so just in case that does become a chance where they do get assembled in New Zealand, then that option's there. The next question is, can CBAFF or New Zealand Customs please conduct a webinar on the classification of tyres? This may help importers and brokers be aligned.
I'll answer that one. I'm certain we can do something once we've done some more work.
Thank you very much for that.
I think the higher priority is that we get the SUVs and ATVs out and get work on that, because then that might assist with that. But otherwise, yep, that's a possibility.
So this question is directed to Paula. Can you please clarify the difference between a 4011-2003 and a 4011-2012? And should the 4011-2012 actually be greater than rather than, sorry, be less than rather than greater than?
I'm not sure what you mean by greater than or less than. I'm presuming that that might relate to the levy. But 4011-2003 relates to the use of assembly of motor vehicles. So that wouldn't be applicable for any tyres at this stage, because we don't have any assembly in New Zealand. So if you're using that, then you shouldn't be. And 4011/2012, that relates obviously to tyres that haven't been assembled in New Zealand, and that have an internal rim of less than 495 millimetres. So that's the difference between those two codes, and whether 4011/2012 should be greater than rather than less than. I'm presuming that relates to the levy. So over to MFE for that one.
It would depend on what the tyre was and what the intended use of the tyre was that they're talking about. It does all relate to that. So
This is for buses and lorries.
yeah.
Which I think is, again, that particular category comes under one of our need to do a little bit further work on that one. So our next question is, will there be an industry body to monitor what tyre shops charge the end user for this fee? I think that one might be for you, Adele.
Well, it's actually a ministry question and a Tyrewise question. So perhaps, do you want to cover off the regulator's responsibility first? Oh no, I'll do it this way. If the regulation covers that a regulated tyre needs to be sold in accordance with the regulated scheme. So if we look at it from the end point, the sale piece stops at the point that the tyre is sold to the consumer. Now, the industry is really good at reporting things they think are unfair. So the first point will be, if you discover somebody is selling a tyre exactly the same as yours and they're charging a different fee, please let us know. You can do that confidentially through the Tyrewise website or through our contacts, or indeed to Dana and Donna. The approach by the scheme will be, hey, how's this come about? Is there some confusion, or is it a, we'll gather some information, but our role is actually to be the helpful person and try and make sure that everybody has the right information. I can't speak to the regulator's role though, so that is then for Dana to respond to.
As Adele says, the piece that comes from the Waste Minimisation Act and is repeated in the regulations is that you have to sell in the regulated tyre in accordance with the accredited scheme. The accredited scheme is Tyrewise. Tyrewise has a range of rules that for the retailer to abide by, including transparent disclosure of the fee on the docket for the customer. But there's two pieces in there. So there's the sale in accordance. So if you followed the rules of Tyrewise, then you've sold in accordance. But there's also, have you chosen the correct tariff code? And that is a piece that comes before sell in accordance. And therefore, it's into the customs legislation. And are you, following the rules of the customs legislation? And then there's a piece of, well, if they're just adding a random number, there could be another reason why it's not matching up. So that would not be in accordance with the scheme if there was a random number, not being in accordance with the tariff code, choosing the wrong tariff code, and then therefore putting the wrong price on, comes down to choosing, that's a question that needs to be corrected up at customs if it's been the wrong one. And as I said, the procedures we're going to be very, very clear if they've been followed or not from Tyrewise. Now, Tyrewise will let us know if they have any issues, and the regulation enforcement is the ministry's job.
And so on top of that, so the flow of information to a tyre shop is from the importer. So if the importer has got that information correct in the first place, as much as they can, that fee should not be adjusted then through to you as the tyre shop or to the tyre shop. Should be exactly the same fee that has been charged to you by the importer through your supply chain. Hence, that transparent disclosure to the customer is important on two fronts. One is exactly what are they paying for and why, and the other part is that check and balance that the fee is not being added to at some part of the supply chain in order to create additional revenue.
Thank you. Our next question is, with the tonnage rate for collectors and end users with a mini will be subsidising large corporations off the road tyres?
The answer is no, absolutely not. The same truck that runs around picking up tyres from retailers or public collection sites or tyre generators is not the same one that will go into the forest to pick up a large forestry tyre or on farm for large agricultural tyres or mining tyres. It's quite a different arrangement. Those larger tyres, such as mining tyres, are on a per collection basis, negotiated directly with the collector, and also using current existing reverse logistics arrangements that with the sellers of those tyres. It's very unlikely that one of those would be mixed up with the mini tyre. So just to be absolutely clear, collectors are paid a per tonne rate, not a per tyre rate. For collection from the mainstream network.
Thanks, Adele. Our next question comes from Justin. Would this fee apply to ride-on mowers?
It's a motorised vehicle.
Motorised vehicle.
Yes.
So yes, yep.
Yes.
The next question is, how does an importer prove intended use?
Yeah, this is the $1,000,000 question, I suppose. There isn't really a way to prove intended use, but Customs does rely on trust between ourselves, importers and brokers. And so one can only hope that they're being honest in their dealings with us as we are with them.
Thank you, Paula. I think that's well answered. So the next question is more of a comment. So it's coming from Jonathan Moore. He said the use of tariff codes for motor vehicle assembly as governed by Section 14 of the Tariff Act of 1988. I understand ministerial authorization via the Gazette is required for use of motor vehicle assembly codes. And again, I think with motor vehicle assembly not taking place in New Zealand, that's not, those codes shouldn't be being used at this time.
Correct.
David has our next question. So regarding the tyre category, is linking regulation tariff codes and the tyre category table that you presented in this session?
No, I know the table that you're referring to, David, but it's not linking to the tariff code. That was linking to the averaging of the EPU in those bands, but not to the tariff codes.
So, and to be clear, that getting those APU averages linked the fee to the tariff code in the end. Yeah.
Our next question is a long one. So if a tractor arrives and is not being registered for road use, and a second one arrives and is registered for road use, how would the fee be applied? And who determines the size and fee per tyre? The rear could be 2 or 4 large, and the front is 2 smaller tyres.
So that's a real easy answer, because the form you have to fill in, you have to describe that quite explicitly, the configuration, how many tyres, the tyre sizes, front and back. I can't speak for the NZTA process because there is some, there's a setup there where they have normalised some of that, but it does go through, as I understand this, an inspection process prior to registered for on-road use, and that's where that information is gathered. So they're using the same type of information as the person who will self-declare to Tyrewise for non-road use tractor.
So Adele, am I right to say that if someone is importing a tractor and it's not being registered for road use, they self-declare to Tyrewise and the invoice comes from the Ministry for the Environment?
That's correct.
And the second one that's coming in that is road registered, they go through the NZTA road registration process, and the schedule in the regulations would apply to that if it's got fixed or variable size tyres.
That's correct.
Anton has got a question for us. Just so that I understand it, when I sell a tyre after the 1st of March from my current stock, I need to sell it as its price and also add the stewardship fee, correct? And what does the company who bought a tyre sell it on again to their customers? And do they also need to invoice their customers the stewardship fee or not?
So the answer to all of those 3 questions is yes. So you as an importer, you have your sale prices of the tyre and the stewardship fee, which you've kept separate through your sales pipeline, whether it goes to a wholesaler and then a retailer. That's transparently disclosed at each part of that transaction. The tyre stewardship fee is kept separate from the sale price of the tyre. And then, yes, at the end, the invoice to the customer transparently discloses the sale price of the tyre and the tyre stewardship fee.
Thanks, Adele. Rob's come back with more information on the off-road tyres. So OTRs only, it's fundamental in the sector. I was very surprised earlier in the session to hear someone say that some tyres do not have individual serial numbers. It speaks volumes to the quality and transparency, perhaps.
That's a foreknoting, yeah.
The next question is, the importer does not know what the tyre is being used for. What do we do?
Importer does not know what the tyre's been used for.
Well, what did they do before the rules came into effect? They still had to choose a customs code.
Exactly.
I'd be very surprised that they don't know what it's
Correct.
about. What is the tyre designed to be used for, rather
Correct.
than if you sell a tyre and someone chooses to use it for something else, you can't control that. But as an importer, you know what the tyre's designed to be used for.
Thank you. Yes, agreed.
I got a comment from David Vinson. So the comment is regarding the Ford Ranger. The stewardship fee will be collected at time of registration by NZTA. This is not an issue for brokers and customs. Brokers and customs only involved in the importation of loose tyres. NZTA handles tyres fitted to vehicles. Yes, that's correct. Thank you, David. The next question is, utes can be used across many different uses. Everyday drive around the city, or a utility vehicle for commercial use, such as electricity contractors. So again, end application can be the issue on categorization of the passenger car or the light truck. As you have stated, that this is being considered urgently as part of the scheme questions raised prior. So yep, that's a work and further work's needed on that one. Thank you for your comment. Wheelbarrows are coming up as a topical question. So small tyres, such as wheelbarrows, have no fee. How is this tyre actually exempt from the fee? Would it be on the importer's declaration that there should be no fee, as they will come under a tariff that shows a fee?
So yes, it's something we have to take offline as to where, how's that communicated. So definitely in the billing process or the information transfer process.
I think it will need to be part of the invoicing process. A little automatic thing is that there are any tyres in this particular shipment that are from non-motorized, to please specify those and provide data. Yeah, and then we don't charge for them. But we have to sort out the actual precise way it's going to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then another topical question is our SUVs and light trucks. So as I understand it, in regards to the tyres that an SUV could use, but are designed as a light truck tyre, it is designed as a light truck tyre. So it would attract the light truck tyre rate. What would you use the tyre for is up to the end user. If I imported some carpet to put on the roof, it still gets classified as carpet, not a roof covering.
Well, that really
This
depends.
is true.
That really depends. If the carpet forms part of the vehicle.
It's all about our information quality, isn't it, Paula?
It certainly is.
I also understand that LT tyres So tyres that I've seen at collectors' sites have LT on them in the rim, where the rim sizes. Quite a lot of them have
the tyre
LT,
markings, Adele.
the tyre markings. But that might not be universal. But I do understand from the ones that I've seen, they have an LT in front of them.
We have been asked the question about tyres that have a P, the same number of the tyre marking, an LT and a nothing. They come from different jurisdictions, the nothing ones than from the others. So they're all out there in the market, and it's mapping that information better to the customs code, which is our issue.
And Shane Douglas has a question, but I'm sorry, Shane, I can't recall. You've said follow-up question, please. I'm sorry, you may have to pop your question into the chat again. I'm not quite sure what your follow-up question was. So moving to the next question. As an importer, we have many different types of tyres in a single container. So how does Custom know what is in a container if they are the ones that pass on info for billing purposes? Or does the importer have to now supply or does the importer have to now supply additional information to Customs in order to avoid incorrect tariff codes being charged?
Correct. They do. Same way as if you import a container of, you know, cups, saucers, radios, TVs, you need to specify those individually on your importation documents. This is no different. So yes, you will need to specify the different types of tyres that you're importing.
And this regulation hasn't caused that, has it, Paula?
No.
It's
No, it
always
has
been the
changed that.
case.
Yeah.
It has always been the case and always should have been the case. So that shouldn't be any change to what's currently happening. If it's not what's currently happening, then make sure it happens now.
Next question is to deal with a ride-on lawnmower. Will there be a fee on a ride-on lawnmower, as an example, if it doesn't get registered and will have multiple size tires on importation?
That's an off-road vehicle, so that process for that would apply.
And the process for registering, the process for an off-road vehicle is to
Self-declared
self-declare.
Tyrewise, and then it comes to ministry, and then invoicing comes from us.
And just for those that deal in ride-on lawnmowers, just be assured that you don't have to sit there and tap each line into the self-declaration form. You can provide a spreadsheet or some other sort of format CSV file, and it will be uploaded and populated. So please don't think you're sitting there doing lots of extra paperwork. It's not like that at all.
Thanks, Adele. The next question is from Ian Harvey. And I apologize, Ian, if I'm reading out these tyre markings very poorly. Following up on the above 13 by 5.0 times 6, this is a 2 kilogram tyre. Is 1330, I'm assuming that's the fee, a fair charge based on the standard passenger car 9 kilogram model?
We're missing the tariff code there. So I think what Ian's saying is that the tariff code for that type and size of tyre is currently sitting in the 1330 listing. What would you have declared that tyre? What code would have you used for that tyre in the past? So we can answer that question.
The next question is coming from Leith. In the case of the 15 by 6.006 multi-rib tyre, where this is amongst all our range are ordered on the website, we have no idea what its final use will be. How will we know what fee to charge?
So just to clarify, Leith is an importer of tyres, and so I think basis from import answer.
I would have thought that you'd have some idea of what those tyres are going to be used for. Otherwise, if you have no clue, then you need to look at the general rules of interpretation, which are at the front of the tariff.
And then again, if you're still not sure, then apply for a tariff ruling.
Correct.
Or make good use of your customs broker and CBAFF, this organisation that's hosting us today.
Correct. These must be designed for a particular purpose.
Thank you, Shane, for giving us the follow-up question. Does the importer need to advise the broker of their account number prior to lodging customs entries to enable billing to go direct to the importer?
The data we will base our invoicing on is coming from what customs records. Paula, what would you normally be doing in this case?
That's between the client and the broker.
Mm.
I think the answer would be yes then.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. If you want the
you're
broker
paying
to
a
be
brokerage fee, so I would imagine that a broker's going to want to be paid for that. So
just don't
like-
understand why. Do you don't mean bank account number, do you? It's a bit confusing, the question.
we have a client codes, importer
Maybe client code.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's what they're meaning. But nothing's changed here from any other importation of goods. So it's the same process, regardless of what you're importing using your broker. So whatever arrangement you have with your broker, that's what you'll need to discuss with your broker.
So moving on to the next question. So some earth mover types are used on industrial vehicles such as port loaders and in forestry. What HS code do we use?
And in forestry, well then if it's used in both, and that's its intended purpose on importation, and that it will be used on both industrial and forestry, and that's the type of business that's involved, then you would need to again apply your look at the tariff and apply your general rules, or get a tariff ruling, or consult with CBAFF and your broker. Same rule, same answer applies really there.
Thanks, Paula. Ian Harvey has got a question around, given there are no specific codes for these small tyres, thinking wheelbarrows, do customs actually know how many tens of thousands actually come in?
I haven't done a stats on import codes, no. So, no, not off the top of my head. I can't give you an answer to that one.
The next question, so the explanatory notes for wheels of HS code 8708.7.70 say K, road wheels, pressed steel, wheel spoked, etc., whether or not fitted with tyres. So why have we been advised to classify tyres imported on rims to be classified as 4011 or 4012?
Because that's the opinion that was drafted and given based on the tariff meetings, codes, notes, etc.
Thanks, Paula. And next question is that we still need some clarification around the 80 codes of the kind used on construction, mining and industrial handling vehicles, and the 70 codes. Is there still to be clarified similar to the light truck?
The short answer is yes, we need to do more work in this area, but I can't reference those two codes, but we do know that there's a problem with those large mining and industrial tyres, just because of the ability to be able to bend them within those codes.
Yep, so the short answer is yes, we need to do a little bit more work in that space. Cody has a question. Could you confirm that a farm trailer tyre falls under 40117039K or agricultural other? If so, would this code cover all farm trailer tyres regardless of size?
That would depend on the type of tread involved. So I'm not sure of the type of tread that goes on farm trailer tyres. So I can't give a categorical answer to that. But if it has other than herringbone or similar, and
So this is the particular one that's attracting a $2 fee.
right. So if
Yeah.
it's other than herringbone or similar, then I would give you a tentative answer of yes.
Thanks, Paula. The next question I think is we've sort of answered already. So we see that tyres for toys are excluded from the stewardship fee. For our tyres for toys classified under tariff 4012, how does Tyrewise know not to raise an invoice to the importer? Is there a mechanism for the import entry to not trigger any fees from Tyrewise? So the fees are actually coming from or invoiced by the Ministry for the Environment. And I believe we'd said earlier in the session that we were looking at coming up with a process so that we could get some information so that they would not be charged. Was that right,
Yes.
Adele?
That's what we said. Yep.
Yeah, and just 4012, I don't know what that tariff code is, but would that be the right code to be putting a tyre from a toy in?
That's retreaded or used tyres.
I'd have to say doesn't sound right.
No.
Yeah.
If it's a toy, I would say probably the wrong tariff code's been
I'd say
used.
Toys are somewhere in the back end of the tariff.
Yeah. So Dean Sharp has a question. Does the tyre stewardship fee form part of the VFD on the import entry for clearance? I'm sorry, I'm not sure what VFD stands
That's
for.
value for duty.
Ah.
That's a customs term, value for duty. So anything that's part of the VFD forms part of any duty that may or may not be payable, in which case there's no duty paid on new tyres. Sorry, correction. There are only certain ones that have. Some of them do, some of them don't.
I would have said the answer is no, because it's not charged until it's registered, and that's through
I would say
NZTA.
no too.
Yeah,
They're asking that we do collect, someone's collecting on loose tyres, isn't it? It's
Yes.
maybe something we have to take advice on.
Okay. Terry,
So
can I into that one?
we'll come back to that one, Dean.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a nice easy one. Can we have a copy of the PowerPoint for today's webinar? I'm sure, yes, we can organise that for you. The next question is a van or MPV tyre considered a light tyre or a passenger car tyre?
What's MPV?
Oh, I'm going to guess and say multi-passenger
Multi-purpose?
vehicle. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So is a van tyre considered a light truck or passenger?
Or is it a commercial vehicle?
There's a few questions in there to understand that one first.
Yep, absolutely.
So we have another question from David. Hi all. Some technical topics are being discussed. Tyre markings such as LT. Sorry, I can't pronounce that.
Irrigations.
Thank you, Paula. Are according to specific industry standards. So maybe best to have an offline session with technical representatives of manufacturers to discuss, just to ensure accuracy. Thank you for your comment there, David. We're down to last three for now. When will the self-declaration form for off-road motorised vehicle units be available?
1
Adele?
March. 1 March will be up live on the website.
And am I right that they won't actually get invoiced until?
So the cycle is gathering that declared data, and every 3 months MFE gets sent a file for invoicing purposes. So yeah, they wouldn't be invoiced that for a wee way if they declared it in March.
Yeah, So in short, there's no rush, but from the 1st of March, that would be they apply, and therefore that's when the form's available. Thank you. Andrew, back to the light truck question. If we have a tyre intended for passenger use, but it has a light truck rating on the sidewall, must we classify this as a light truck tyre?
The end use is for going on a passenger vehicle, then no, you can put it under the motor cars.
I think we have to say, though, we need to come back with further information on that because it costs more to recycle. Well, it's a differently weighted tyre.
Okay.
So, yeah, that falls into our let's come back with more information on how the light truck v PCR tyres are classified.
Yep. Okay.
But you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the correct answer for now.
It is.
In light of anything else,
Yeah.
yes, that's the correct answer for now. Yeah.
Yeah. So our last one is a comment. To be honest, it sounds like New Zealand Customs are setting customs brokers up here. New Zealand Customs should have tariff classifications already predetermined for custom brokers to use, as they have been involved in this Tyrewise scheme, not the customs brokers.
To be honest, customs brokers, this is not anything different than what they have been or should be doing. Customs brokers are registered, they're required to pass certain competency levels. This is the classification of goods as part of their tools of trade. And as I say, classifying goods is no different. Just because we're dealing with tyres here, you know, they've got the same issues and concerns and things like that when it comes to classifying any other goods. So they need to use their experience and their competencies to help out. And if there is doubt, then they go through the normal process that they would with any other importation. So no, we're not setting them up. They have a job to do, well, same as we do.
Also, Customs isn't the author of this scheme, so we're just using the tariff as a basis for charging on loose tyres, because presumably that's the best application that can be thought of at this point in time.
Yeah, Adele, did you want to comment around how we got to using the tariff codes?
No, I think it's been well covered by Dan at the beginning of the presentation. It's the, I think, I mean, I'd echo what Paula says. Some of this, from our point of view, questions are coming from perhaps there wasn't a level of accuracy needed or applied prior to 1 March. Now it has a direct impact on a fee. There's more attention being given to the correct application of it. That would just be what we're observing happening.
Thank you. Can New Zealand Customs please share where we can see the ruling for classification of tyres on rims to be classified as 4011 or 4012 rather than 8708, so we can share this with our customers?
Yeah, we'll look at doing that at the same time as the other guidance that we're looking at.
Thanks, Paula. Next question is, given the extent of questions around the introduction on the 1st of March, it will be helpful to see a draft of what the self-declaration form would look like so any issues can be ironed out before the 1st of March.
You can actually find a copy of the questions that will be asked, which is in the regulations. It prescribes what Tyrewise is allowed, the information Tyrewise has to collect. So if you want to see that information, yeah, just go have a look in the regulations. The danger of putting it up before the 1st of March is people start filling it out before the 1st of March. But yeah, all the information's in the regulations.
The next question is, we have instances where we bring in earth mover tyres for testing purposes and the used tyres get exported back to origin. Will these still be subject to the Tyrewise fee?
So question is, are you saying that they are the same as aircraft tyres that have their end of life managed in another country? So an earth mover tyre is bought into New Zealand, used in New Zealand, and then exported back out of New Zealand for its end of life management. I think we need a bit of clarification there.
So if you're able to put some more clarification around that, that would be helpful. And our last question at the moment is from Nigel. We have spent some time with their custom brokers and helping them with the codes, so they should be using this for us, the importer. It's probably more of a comment, sorry.
Well done, Donna.
That is all 84 questions answered.
That's really going to provide us some useful FAQ information too for others that haven't attended the webinar today. So perhaps I just
we have another one, Adele. Sorry.
Okay, you go. You go.
Maybe if we actually give them another. So I see it is 1 o'clock, but if we give another couple of minutes, now they're coming in thick and fast again.
So this is this relates to, because it's about the vehicle, that's NZTA process, not the subject of this webinar, around loose tyres. So that's around what use for a van.
Oh, so that's the Toyota Hiace can be used as commercial or private vehicle. Do we treat this as LTR or one? So thank you for that. Hannah has asked, we have instances where we're bringing in earth mover tyres for testing purposes and then the used tyres get exported back to origin. Will these be still subject to the Tyrewise fee?
Yep.
So that was that same.
Yeah.
Has just repeated that one.
The same applies to race car tyres. If there's anybody on the call around those, sets of race car tyres are brought into New Zealand, used and tested in New Zealand, and then sent back for end of life in other countries. That's one of the little curly things that sits on the peripheral that we can manage at a later date. But at the moment, there's no exemption for them. An exemption would have to be applied for, same as aircraft tyres that are managed out of country.
And it looks like a lucky last question to answer live is back to the tractor tyre question. If we have a shipment of 20 units, 10 may be pre-sold, say 5 are registered, 5 are not registered, and the balance will go to a dealer with no known final registration information for several months as they get sold. How would they apply the fee? Via the import declaration or the final dealer on sale?
This doesn't. So this is if you're bringing, I think it's, are you bringing in 20 tractors, not 20 tractor tyres? So if you're bringing in 20 tractors, then the on-road cost is applied when they're registered for road or not. But ultimately, it's the person who's purchased the tractor who's determining whether they're going to use it on the road or not. They just need to keep the evidence. If it's already been registered for on the road, fees already being paid for. If not, it's self-declaration. But I'm wondering whether this question is about bringing in a shipping container of tractor tyres. So I'm not quite sure.
We may need to come back to you on that one too if you have some further clarification. So that's all our open questions. Adele, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, so I'm not, we'll probably just really quickly work through this. I'm not sure whether, Dana, are you still in control of the presentation?
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, lovely. So Tyrewise, as we've all said, is New Zealand's solution for end-of-life tyres, co-designed with the whole industry supply chain. So I want to be clear about that. That's importers, wholesalers, retailers, collectors, transporters, processors, and people in between. Motor vehicle sellers, new and used, was a comprehensive process with a lot of consultation that took place leading up to the final consultation from the ministry. We have a solution. It's absolutely not perfect. We know that. We're going to find some areas we need to improve on. There's processes in place for that. 1st of March is launch date, and that's not changing. Next slide. Phased rollout. So we have the rollout this period of time, and currently now is called implementation, when we're making sure that all importers are registered with Tyrewise and all tyre sellers are registered with Tyrewise, so we can make sure that we get you the right information. At the moment, we have 86 importers registered with Tyrewise, and so if you are not registered, please make sure that you do. And then we know that we have a huge amount of tyre sellers that are not registered with the scheme so far. If you've registered, you would have received some point of sale support material and some other material from us approximately a week ago. 1st of March is the administrative launch of the scheme, where the fee starts to be collected. 1st of September is when it's fully operational, and that is when the collection of tyres occurs through Tyrewise, and the collectors and the retailers, fitters, garages, generators of tyres no longer pay their collector or their processor to take those tyres away. That is wholly paid by Tyrewise. Then the processors and manufacturers of product are paid an incentive based on what they produce to the market, to the domestic market, upon eligible sale and evidence of that eligible sale. During this period of March to September, our team will be coming out and working directly with generators, retailers, fitters, so we can understand what your current arrangements are that you have in place, and make sure that you can use the software for booking and you have all of the point of sale material that you need. So the fee is distributed through the supply chain, so it's initially charged to the importers, and it's charged through your supply chain to the retailers and generators. The generators receive free collection for tyres from 1 September. Public collection sites will also receive payment from Tyrewise. That is for consumers to drop off up to 5 tyres at a time. They're quite highly monitored. The consumers are ultimately the ones paying the fee, and the service is provided on their behalf. Tyre transporters, their costs are paid, the transport costs are paid entirely by Tyrewise. Processors and manufacturers paid out an incentive. And between there is a pool of funding for grants, for market stimulation to help ensure that actually ultimately all of our end-of-life tyres produced in New Zealand are retained in New Zealand as a resource. One of the changes in the regulation at the end of the day was that no incentives are paid on export product. So you will hear some conversations around that. We are working with any of those processors that currently export their product to bring them into the system as well. Next slide. I think we can skip this one, Dana, because we've covered this quite a lot this morning around who collects information and what. So just to clarify, importers are responsible for paying the tyre stewardship fee to government on all tyres imported that are regulated tyres. Retailers are responsible for on-charging the tyre stewardship fee to their customers on every new tyre sold. The wholesaler distributor, piece in the middle, needs to transparently declare the value of the fee they're passing on to the retailer. And we have on the website, we have a mock-up of a sales docket or invoice with some wording on there that can be found in the Tyrewise toolbox. And just so you know as well, we have been providing support to some of the computerized inventory management companies to help them understand what's required there. The key thing is failure to sell a tyre in accordance with the accredited scheme is an offence, as Dana went through that before. You need to make sure that you are selling your tyre in accordance with the scheme so that you're not running up against fines. Next slide. As I said before, the point of sale material to those retailers and importers that have registered have been sent out. The first part is point of sale material that's going to help you with that conversation with your customer about the tyre stewardship fee being applied to the new tyre from 1 March. but that you will also, should you choose to, be charging them for the cost of disposing of the old tyre you're removing from that date. From the 1st of September, the only fee that is charged is a tyre stewardship fee on new tyres. You stop charging any disposal fees. And by then, there would have been sufficient revenue built up in the fund for us to start to become operational. And then this is just an example of some support material for retailers about their role in Tyrewise and the celebration of being in that, actually, because it's New Zealand's first regulated scheme. Tyre waste was a problem where it's inappropriately disposed of, and it's taken a lot of work to get to this point, so it's very important for us to celebrate, actually, that we're doing something collectively for the good of the environment. And that is me, I believe. Is it down on my last slide? Yep. There will be another webinar around readiness for launch for everybody. Anybody can attend that, so you'll all would have started to get that information in the latest e-news that has gone out. So recommend you jump on that if you want more detailed information on Tyrewise. Now, see, there's some questions here. So, oh, okay, so the first one was made up tractors. Yes, so those are whole tractors, not the tyre. So the on-road, they captured it on-road registration, on-road costs, or they will be declared through the online form. The next person asked, when are our visits going to happen? We're an importer. So if you don't need a visit, if you're only an importer, you need to have registered with Tyrewise. And so you would have gone through the process of completing a form online. And part of that form then asks you if you are, you're also involved in selling tyres, or if you need collections of tyres. So if you stopped at the importer piece only, you don't need a visit from Tyrewise. But resellers, so that's tyre garages, tyre shops, large generators of end-of-life tyres will be visited between the 1st of March and the end of September, just to make sure you have all of the information you need about access to your site, what your typical collection schedule is, who you currently use, making sure you've got the support information that you need, and also making sure that you can use the software for booking a collection. If the importer tells the customs broker to use a certain tariff classification to the customs broker in writing, but it is wrong, will the customs broker get an admin penalty or not? Paula.
Okay, with this one, it's the same principle that would apply if any importer has a dispute with their customs broker. Customs broker, something to be aware of is the customs broker will have access to explanatory notes and other things that actually help support the tariff. So the importer may not be privy to that information. I would suggest that firstly, a very thorough conversation takes place between the importer and the broker. But if there is a dispute still existing and the broker is not comfortable with the tariff heading that the importer is telling them to put on the entry, regardless of whether it's verbally or in writing, then they should be applying for a tariff ruling. Anything further?
The customs broker is the professional here in terms of the classification and the use of the tariff. So we do get instances where importers, in respect of concession usage, favour a classification or a use of a concession when the broker may not agree. And in some instances, we get complaints from brokers with regards to this. So, and we act on them. So that's the risk for the importer. Again, I reiterate, the customs broker is the professional here, and if he doesn't believe it to be correct, then he should be providing that information to the importer.
Or seeking further clarification by way of a ruling. The broker has to be comfortable with what they're doing. At the end of the day, it's their declarant code that's being used, and therefore they're responsible for what goes on their declarant code.
Well, the same token, if a customs broker, as opposed to tariff classification as to end use, there is always a defence for a customs broker if he's acted in good faith. And if the importer's told them in writing to that effect as to what the end use is, there may be a defence in that.
Yep.
And we could infringe the, under the, no, I'd have to take advice on that. I'm not sure if infringement penalties apply here. But anyhow, that's, the customs broker's the professional.
Yep.
And he interprets the tariff. Over.
Or she.
Or she. Yeah.
I knew that was going to come up.
Sorry,
Just a naive question here. Does everybody who imports need a freight forwarder or a customs broker? They wouldn't be doing it themselves?
Yes.
Pretty much these days, yes.
Mm.
They have an importer code or a declarant code and that sort of thing. So
Definitely.
to make an entry, generally nowadays, we don't even have access to private persons at the counter anymore. They have to make it by arrangement. So not many clear their own goods anymore.
Yeah.
Mm. Understand. Okay. The last question is, if someone wants to import tyres for their own personal use, do they have to register with Tyrewise first, as in it's not a commercial import? There's two things there. Dana mentioned about in the regulation that if the value of that import is less than $1,000, there's no declaration required. And then secondly, no, you wouldn't register as an importer with Tyrewise. You would just complete the self-declaration form on the website. Okay.
Well, thank you. I think we've come to the end of a very informative webinar. Thank you, all the participants and everyone that contributed. We do have David Vinson with his hand up. We are a little bit over time, but David, if you've got, would you like to speak? I'll let Corinne give you the mic. No, okay. Thank you, everyone. We will collate all the information and the webinar will be on our website and we'll follow up with some more questions and answers. So thank you for everyone that attended.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for the questions.
Thank you.
Because it's not a duty.